I wanted to go back to a topic that we talked about before when we talked about the budget. You know, Charles Barron, when he was successfully ran for city council, he began to preach that the racism is in the budget. And one of the primary reasons why Mayor Bloomberg wanted to be a mayor for a third term, I believe, is purely economical. You know, his portfolio has increased since he's been mayor. And when you're in charge of New York City budget, New York City, for those who don't know, has the third highest budget in the country, New York State having the second highest, and the state of California having the first. These individuals, that's massive amount of money. And when you talked about white men making other white men rich, you know, a lot of these government contracts are no-bid contracts. These are contracts that are given by the governor and his administrators and the mayor and his administrators to whomsoever. And I know there was a lot of articles written about some of the contracts given away by Mayor Bloomberg. These individuals do very little business with African American and Latino people. So this taxpayer money, this budget, and this is every year, New York City spends $63 billion, New York State $163 billion. Every year this money is spent, and these individuals are making money hand over fist while we continue to have 50% black male unemployment. You know,
it's unfortunate that people don't really have a clear understanding on the finances of city and state government.
Right.
You know, this is your money. You know,
exactly.
You know, we were talking earlier, and someone stated that, you know, CUNY could be free. CUNY's never going to be free. That's taxpayers' dollars. Those schools are being paid for. Those educations are being paid for. It's being paid for by taxpayers. You may not be paying directly out of your pocket for your child to go to school, but that money is being utilized to ensure that our kids get educations. You know, we have a tendency to think that the taxpayer dollar is really non-existent. It's just money that just appears. That's real money. People are making a lot of money. People are becoming very rich, as you just stated. But we have to be clear. We should control where those dollars go.
Exactly.
We should control how that money is disseminated in the benefit of the collective. So that's what we have to start paying attention to.
You know, when you say CUNY should be free, CUNY was free when the majority of it were white folks.
Right.
People like Koch, A. Beam, all got their miseducation or their education free there. When the large number of blacks and Latinos started coming into the CUNY system, that's when you began paying tuition, and now CUNY is one of the higher tuitions in the state.
Right. And one of the other things that Charles Barron has pointed out that a lot of people don't know, you know, you have so many individuals holding seats of influence, commissioners, directors, unnecessarily, who are getting paid six-figure salaries. You know, throughout the state administration, throughout the city administration, these individuals are robbing the taxpayer blind. But once again, the predominant individuals that's occupying the shenanigans that are benefit off of this 163 billion and 63 billion, 163 billion state budget, 63 billion city budget are not members of our community. And I think that's preposterous. And when Charles Barron says put the magnifying glass on his budget, there are ways to cut fat where you don't have to hurt the poor. You know, you don't need a soda tax, or you don't need to raise the fare. You know, if you cut some of this fat, there's money that individuals are enjoying and accessing. Some of these individuals, because these jobs are really non-existent, they have second and third jobs. These people are making money hands over fist. Charles Barron always said the racism is in the budget. And this is what we have to look at.
Well, it's no question about it. I think this is what shows you that our elected officials are just that, elected officials. As Automatics points out, they're not representatives. They're elected officials because they don't represent us. Now, with all the shenanigans and thuggery that's done by Bloomberg administration, you have not seen the blacks and Latinos inside the city council wage a glorious battle. You have not seen that. His budgets go through just a little bit too smoothly. The only one you hear talking about racism in the budget is Charles Barron. Now, when they carving up billions of dollars, we need to be heard from, in the tradition of an Adam Clayton Powell, who would hold up Congress until he gets what was good for us in those budgets, in that legislation. And unfortunately, while Bloomberg is doing all this, he's still only one person. He's only the mayor. The city council is going along with it. So while we should look at Bloomberg and put a spotlight on Bloomberg, we also have to put a spotlight on the black elected officials who sit there silently and allow these things to happen. Now, you know, you pay a tax for being conscious in America. Right when I heard them say they're rezoning the Bronx the other day, I'm looking at New York 1, and they say this area of the South Bronx hasn't been rezoned since 1961. They're rezoning it now. I said, well, if you don't own nothing in that area, you're gone. You're history. They're going to move you out. Now they're doing the same thing in Bedford-Stuyvesant. The same thing that's been going on the last 20 years in Harlem is systematically. I mean, if you understand the nature of white folks, the strategies of white folks, and they use the same playbook. So now you look and see what area are they going at next. You know, whether it was all the blacks and Latinos that lived out there in Coney Island are being moved, Red Hook being moved, Bed-Stuy. You look at what they're doing, and then you say, where's the fight coming from? There's no fight. Bloomberg is rezoning all these areas, bringing white folks from out of town. They're recruiting white folks from Europe. They're bringing white folks from the furthest reaches of Long Island that's coming back to the city. They're tired of riding 2 hours to get back home. They're now laying their stakes right here in New York City, and they're rezoning everything. They're rezoning parts of Bedford-Stuyvesant, and yet you have Al Van right there allowing it to go down. So the fact of the matter is, while we have to, yes, look at Bloomberg, who's a businessman that's going to make billionaires richer, millionaires richer, but we also have to look at the black elected officials that's allowing all this to go down.
You know, that's no big surprise. The black and Latino elected officials, you knew where they were coming from the get-go when they elected Christine Quinn as Speaker of the Council. Bloomberg, there's no surprise, has 14 deputy mayors. More than any other mayor in the history so far. And only one of them is allegedly black. And you never see Dennis Walcott any place around unless it's a black issue, and he's still not calling the shots. He's simply in the picture standing behind Bloomberg. So the city council proved right from the get-go that they're not worth anything because they're simply, again, butt kissers for Christine, who is butt kisser, and she and Bloomberg together are running the $63 billion budget of the city.
And that's why it's so important that we start utilizing our vote to benefit our community. That's why it's so important to have the Freedom Party. That's why it's so important for us to have an alternative that's going to be to the benefit of our community, because we have been failed by every Democrat, Republican, other than Charles Barron. So now that Charles Barron,
now his wife Inez Barron too,
right, and Inez Barron, and now that the Freedom Party is in existence, we need to collectively ensure that that's the stand or the party that we use to ensure that we have our issues addressed politically.
And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because not only is it the budget, when it comes to things like Katrina, when the Congressional Black Caucus, when they didn't stand up, when this went down to Bush 43, when Katrina happened, and they allowed Bush to go 4 or 5 days without seriously addressing black mothers that was floating in the water, dying, and you saw black babies with young mothers on rooftops, and they crying, and you seen babies starving to death, and all these black bodies floating, and the Congressional Black Caucus should have demanded that Bush 43 be impeached. Now, can they pull it off by themselves? No, but they should have demanded it. Regardless, whether you can get it done or not, you do it anyway. You go into the fight, you don't have to know whether you're going to get a victory or not, but at least you fight. Right. So I'm saying that there's a responsibility we have. This is why I respect what's going on in the Freedom Party and see the necessity for a Freedom Party. We cannot continue to have business as usual. To let these so-called consensus candidates, the Bill Thompsons of the world, the Dinkins of the world, the H. Carl McCaws continue to so-called represent us. They don't represent us. They represent white corporations. They represent the white community. They don't represent blacks. When you get Keith Wright, who, when Andrew Cuomo appoints his lieutenant governor, and he says, I don't know him, but if Andrew Cuomo said he's all right in my book. How much of a Negro can you be, and Uncle Tom can you be, to say something like that? Because he knows that our people will not punish him for that, so he can kiss white folks' butts publicly the same way Al Van and all those other Negroes in the city council did not vote for Charles Barron and can still walk around in public and not be checked by the black community. They have no respect for our community, because if had a Jewish person been running for the city council seat, the Jews inside the city council would have voted for that person. If they had been Italian, they would have voted for that person. If they had been Irish, they would have voted for that person. Charles Barron couldn't get one vote. What has he done so wrong, so bad, so disgraceful that he couldn't garner one vote? He voted for himself.
He's a black man, that's right. You know, when you talk about Keith Wright's statement, it reminded me of Charlie Rangel's statement yesterday, that if Cuomo wasn't here, they would have to invent Cuomo because of the good that he's
And Mike, when you talk about the inactivity of these so-called leading blacks or these consensus candidates, when you look at the unemployment figures for African Americans, and when people talk about stop the violence and stop crime, you have to look at the connection to unemployment and crime. When you look at the high school dropout rates and the dilapidated educational system, you have to look at that and look when you talk about crime. For our community, for our elected officials and these so-called leading blacks, and many of them are the head of a lot of these large congregations, large mosques, when they don't respond, you know, America had a 9% unemployment rate, and the whole Congress, the whole Senate, the whole nation got together to attack that unemployment rate. But when you have black males with 50% unemployment rates for the last over 10 years, and these so-called black, these consensus candidates do absolutely nothing in terms of, yo, this is emergency. 50% unemployment, we have to do something about this. For them to be silent for all of these years.
Look, brother, you have been one of the strongest leaders inside of 100 blacks from the inception. Now, you know, when we went against Giuliani, we had some serious battles with the Giuliani administration. We didn't run for cover, so I'm not saying this, and yet not saying that we and to exempt us from this same challenge. We challenged Giuliani when other organizations were silent. When Sergeant Brown, who was shot by fellow police officers, when they tried to change the whole script and make it look like he shot himself or that he was shot by a perpetrator, someone other than a police officer, we stood up. When it happened to Louima, when he got the stick rammed up his rectum, we stood up. So I'm not saying that I want elected officials to stand up when we won't stand up ourselves. We got the history. We can go case by case. Let's go line by line. I'll show you where 100 blacks stood up to Giuliani, stood up to Bloomberg with Omar Edwards, stood up to Raymond Kelly. We got the history there. You have been duly elected by our people and you do nothing. And yet now you're running for cover. You're trying to find a way to support Andrew Cuomo and you won't support Charles Barron. The time is up. All the stuff that you've done all these years, your time is up.
You know, we have to remember that these people are bedfellows. You know, they operate from the same position, they're self-serving, and they're not doing anything to benefit our community. I think the onus is on the people to ensure that we use our votes, and when we're dealing with this political dynamic, that we use our votes to make sure these people are out. They're doing absolutely nothing for us. I mean, if you can't see the writing on the wall and understand the need for the Freedom Party to be a strong party in this state, and for Charles Barron to get as many votes, and I believe be elected as governor of New York State, then you are basically failing yourself. So we really have to step up and ensure that this challenge is addressed.
I'm not so sure where we got this fancy word consensus candidates from. What does that mean? Is that a cover-up so we don't use the right thing? They're house niggers. There ain't no such a consensus. They work, when you say they didn't do anything for us, no, not only they didn't do anything for us, everything they do is against us. When you could go out there and you could say that Cuomo is the man that we should be voting for, it's not so much you're not doing anything for us, you're fighting against us because you're putting a cracker up there who has absolutely no use for black folks and is not going to give a damn about working people's issues, black folk issues, or anything.
Well, you know, one thing I just have to say very quickly. Anybody that's in the sound of our voices and understand the need for the Freedom Party, I think you should tell everyone you know.